In today's video, I'm going to walk you through a full end-to-end, cozy and autumnal edit of an indoor and outdoor picture. So let's edit. What you see here is the original shot. As you can see, it's quite cool, and usually that's the case with raw files. I would like to make this scene a lot more autumnal, and also I want the image to give back that kind of warm and sunny feeling that we had on that specific autumn day. It was taken around late morning, the sun was out and the whole scene looked a lot warmer. So what I would like to do is just initially adjust some of the basics, maybe the exposure and some of the colors here. I want to add a touch of brightness, just a little bit, reduce the contrast a bit, and then go immediately to play with the tones first. This is a trick that I recently learned. Really wanted to give it a try, and it works perfectly to bring those gorgeous colors out in your image. So what you do is you lift the first 4 sliders up in the saturation window. Red, oranges, yellows and greens. You desaturate the blue, the aqua, the blues, the purples and the magentas. Then we go down to calibration and we lift the green primary and then we reduce the blue primary, which now you see shifted the colors quite a bit. Now I'm going to go back to this saturation and I'm going to adjust some of this. So I want probably less on the orange, a bit less on all of this to be fair. Maybe I'm going to desaturate the greens a tiny bit, and then I'm also going to move the hues of the green more towards the yellows and olives. So now I'm getting a lot more of that autumnal look. I am going to lift the vibrance up just because I feel like now it feels a little bit desaturated, so I'm going to lift the vibrance up a little bit like that. Add a tiny bit of the haze to create a bit more atmospheric feeling to this shot. And I think what I'm also going to see is increasing the warmth a little bit. Okay, so now I think we are getting a lot more balance around the colors. What I forgot to do and what I like to do first is actually cropping the image. So I'm going to move on to the crop section now, and then let me actually set the ratio. I'm going to crop with the 5:7 ratio. And I just want to lose a little bit of that sky in the image and keep a little bit closer to the left first third of the image. Okay, so I think this is a nice crop. Now I'm going to add a bit of vignette, so maybe around this 27. I think this is fine, and yeah, maybe bring it a bit more, which will help framing our subject more and driving the attention to Cami and his bike. Now, what I'm going to move on to now is I would like to add some masks to this image and work on specific parts of the image rather than doing general adjustments. I'm going to add a radial gradient, which is going to be our light source. So this is going to be our sun peeking through the trees, like this, that the path is there is also affected. And so this is the sun. So I am adding exposure here to the image as well as warmth of that exposure, plus I'm going to also actually add a bit more exposure. I want this to be quite bright, and I'm going to reduce the highlight. And I am also going to add a bit of the haze, so we have a nice kind of atmospheric feel to the image. So maybe like this. What I would like to do though is I would like to brush this off of Cami just a little bit. And his bike, because the sun is actually hitting him from the front rather than from the back. Light brush, and then going to brush this off him just a little bit. I'm going to leave it on at the edges just in case that's something that does not still hit, but mostly going to take this off. Nice. So now you can see this is quite a nice effect. Okay, now I'm going to work on the background. So I'm going to create a new mask and I'm going to select background, and what I really want to do is just a tiny bit, just a very tiny bit, going to reduce exposure in the background. I'm going to reduce the contrast, and I am going to reduce the texture and going to reduce the clarity as well. So it creates a softer background. Next, I would like to add some detail and vibrance to Cami. So I'm going to select subject. So this time I'm working on Cami, and I'm going to just increase the brightness on him. I'm going to maybe reduce highlights a tiny bit, and going to add some saturation. And I'm going to lift the textures up. So it creates kind of a contrast between the background and Cami. So Cami is going to be more sharp and more textured because of I want his hair and I want the texture in his hair and in his shirt to be showing, whilst I want the background to be softer. Okay, so now I think that I want more attention on Cami. So what I would like to do is a radial gradient around him. And this is the part where I am going to now increase the exposure, the warmth, and maybe adding some further dehaze here. And now I will do the same, that I'm going to remove this effect from Cami using a brush. And now I want to add some, in the original edit I added some more vignette using the brush. So I'm going to go in with a bigger brush, and I'm going to add a vignette just around the areas that don't have a light source. So I'm going to add it to these corners here. And what I want is reducing the exposure. And so I can just softly and maybe I can just lift the shadows a little bit. Maybe okay. And then I think I'm gonna go back to Cami and I just wanna lift to this effect, and maybe I just want him to be a bit brighter. And now I think if I look at this, I want the whole image to be a bit warmer, just a tiny bit warmer maybe. And maybe I want to increase the vibrance more. Yeah. And lastly, I am going to add some color grading, which for the shadows I like to add more of a green tint. I'm going to add, maybe I just make it a little bit less so. So if I'm just move the saturation, so I have it just moving it on the saturation slider. So I add the saturation to 6, let's say, and then I add warmth to the highlights by selecting more of a peachy color. And then also I move it further down in the slider. Maybe like here is the before and after. Next I'm going to work on an image that I took of Cami at home. My idea here was creating a cozy picture, and I wanted to add some candles as well into the image. The candles are not lit in real life, and I thought that in the edit I'm going to add that. So I set them there as prop, but they were unlit. Now obviously I feel like this is not a great composition, so I'm going to first crop this picture so it's better, and I'm going to set it to 4 to 5 crop. Going to get that, lose more of that big curtain to the left, and I want his eye to be on the rule of line, on the upper line. So I think this way. Just lift it a little bit more. Have it this way. So this way we have the curtain, we have the candles, and then we have Cami positioned there as well. So this is the starting image. Now I am going to work on some of the general sliders here, and I'm going to lift the exposure up quite a bit. Somewhere around 40, like this. I'm going to take the highlights down to about 20, and I'm going to brighten the image by lifting the shadows and the blacks up. So 25, but I don't really want to lose those nice moody shadows on him. I do want the image to feel brighter. So I'm also going to modify the blacks, so maybe somewhere this way. Then I am going to play a little bit with the color mixer. So we are in the color mixer and then the saturation tab. And I'm going to lift the saturation on the oranges, somewhere like that. I'm going to saturate the yellows. And I'm gonna see what the calibration is going to do. I'm mainly thinking what it's going to do to this back one, and if it does anything funny on Cami and then the other part of the image, we can always adjust that as well. So I'm going to increase the calibration to this, the blue primary. Yeah, like in the, if you look at the outdoors, it's moving some more yellows into the background. But it's also making Cami look a little bit more red, I think. So I'm going back to the slider Now I don't really like how saturated these blues are, so I'm going to remove the blue saturation from the candles, and I want them to be less, to drive less focus on them. And of course I'm gonna take down, I don't think there is much purple and magenta in the image, but I'm going to desaturate them as well. Now in terms of the hues, I am going to move the reds towards more of the oranges, so you see how it changes chemist's clothes. And I'm going to move the greens more towards olives as well. The luminance red, I think I'm going to move it further down to 50-ish. Okay. Do you see the effect has done? Now I think I want this image to feel warmer a little bit, so make it a bit warmer generally. I'm going to add a bit of vignette as well, so I'm going to the effects panel and I'm going to add more vignette to this image. And then I think now I'm moving on to masks, and generally I want Cami to be brighter, so I'm going to add a mask, a radial gradient here around him, and I'm going to add exposure so he looks brighter, and I'm also going to lift the shadows a little bit. Okay? Now I want the outdoors to feel a bit more atmospheric, so I would like to add the brush around here, so this outdoors will feel a bit brighter and more atmospheric. So I'm going to just increase the light here, add warmth to the outdoors, and going to add a bit of the haze as well. I'm gonna select Cami and let's see, just adding a tiny bit more trust as well as exposure on him. And then I'm going to add some texture. Now here I want to use the brush tool, and what I exactly want to do is increasing the texture. I'm going to decrease my brush and I want to add texture to his hair and to his clothes. And then I'm going to decrease it even more and zoom in and just add texture to his eyes. Now I am going to light the candles, which I'm going to use by using a radial gradient. So just here I'm going to add a little trickle of light first, which I do so by adding the radial gradient, and then I add some exposure here, and I'm also going to add some warmth to this light. And you can see a little flame is created. Now I'm going to create another one, a slightly bigger one, and then I place it on there as well, and then add some further exposure to this and further warmth as well. I'm going to do the same for this one as well, so I create a little one first, a adding the exposure. Then I'm going to create another one, a little bit bigger one, which is going to now take the exposure and the warmth just by his finger. I am adding another radial filter, and just around here they will create some brightness. So I want this area to really reflect that warmth of the candles. So I'm going to add warmth, more brightness to this, and let's see what the haze does. Does it? Yeah, this I think works perfectly. I want to increase the vibrance in the overall picture, which I quite like. And I think I want his face only to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going back to the masks and I'm going to add a radial gradient. And then lift the exposure. I probably want to add some more vignetting manually, so I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to make this bigger, like a big brush, like I did with the previous one, and I'm going to reduce the exposure. And add this one in. I'm going to do lastly a color grading, where I'm going to add some greens to the shadows, some dark greens. Maybe like this, and then I'm going to add some peach tones to the highlights. Oh, I think one thing I could do is the luminance. I can decrease the luminance of the oranges and the yellows. Yeah. Okay, so this should be our final image. I hope you found these editing tutorials useful. One thing I did want to mention though is how you take the picture and how you take the photo will greatly impact on what you can achieve in the edit as well. The lighting situations that you use and the creative decisions you make during the shooting process will have a big impact for that. And on that note, in my previous video I shared hygge photography tips, which talks exactly about that. So if you are interested in that type of content, I see you in this video.